story because it's very popular. And then when his father was told by one big great saint, and he said, he looked at this small baby who is Siddhartha Gautama, and then he looked at Buddha and said, either this kid will become one of the biggest ruler of this world as a king, or he will become the one of the greatest spiritual leader. But I'm crying because I won't able to listen to his teachings. So then king was quite worried, because if the saint only says he will only become a good king, no worry, but then he gives two options, that really troubles the dad. And then his responsibility is to look after the kingdom, and then his son's job will be the same thing. That's all. Most of the father, they think like this, right? So then when Siddhartha grew up, then father thought like, well, if he sees something, some negative sides of samsara, like dying, and then aging, and then sickness, all this sort of thing may trouble him, and to be, maybe he, what we are talking about, renunciation, that he's really afraid of that. So then his father tried to keep away from all this. But maybe it is really funny, because I was listening to someone once talk, I think he's a professor, it's on YouTube. So he's saying in a very different way. Mostly we say that Buddha's imprint or past life, but that professor has a different thing to offer. He said, for example, you have a kid and then you say, don't go through that door, just go only from this door only. Then we have this kind of mind, way of thinking. I always want to go in that way, not this door, because they are so curious, right? So that happened with the Shakyamuni. That's how he explains. That might be true, right? So it's wonderful. Our teacher, when they say how our mind works, is very funny, because there's one switch button in our class, and they say, please don't press this. If you press that, nothing happens. But every time a student press this, because this is the sort of teaching that he wants to teach us in the class, saying, we have this kind of habit that if you say do it, you won't do it. Don't do it, you will always do that. So same thing here. So maybe same thing, because I was wondering, because people like you don't have any backgrounds of Buddhism, and how wonderful that you find this Buddhism very inspiring and the teachings really helps you. But His Holiness is always pushing his followers, and then especially Tibetans and Himalayans. Up to now he is saying, you should not just go blind faith. You should try to study it and analyze it. And this is how we should change our way of thinking, and this is how we should practice. Not like just saying my parents do these prostrations and offering butter lamps and I am doing that same thing. That does not help. But then still His Holiness, and especially also me, that in Spiti I'm facing this problem. The youngsters, they don't, maybe I'm not skillful enough, maybe, but they don't have much interest. But look at you people. You came here, spend your time, and try to take from, you have jobs, then you quit this, and then try to what we call it, collect some holidays. So then you try to come to listen to what this Buddhist teacher has to say, and what will concentration inside us. So you are doing it. It's really funny. So how you are saying do this, they are not doing it. Maybe you are not so much aware of it, then something comes, right? Funny thing. So go back to Buddha. So he has all these facilities. And then nothing is lacking in what he needs, actually, in view of our thing. He has one of the most beautiful women as his wife, and then also title, and then respects everything. But he's not satisfied. The first sign of his not really happy is like in two ways. First, he saw this dying and aging. Then the question is to his friend or his assistant, will this happen to me too? This is big question. But we never ask this kind of question. We say, oh, this is a reality, this is a biological. We put this way, right? Sure, it is biological. But then we don't really like this kind of aging. We don't always want to be young, right? This is a good sign, because if somebody says you look like in your 40s, then I go, no, I'm in 30s. What are you saying? And then somebody says, oh, you look like in 20s, then I go, I'm not 20s. But then you feel like accepting it, right? This is a big sign. And then you heard that in Dharamsala, from the Minzikam, the Tibetan hardware store, they have a very good that it takes away all the wrinkles, and then it's really good. Then surely people will go and get this, because they don't like it. So Buddha has this curiosity already, he feels like. But he never thinks about there's some things to take away the wrinkles. Then he feels like, is there any way to stop this kind of aging? Is there any way to stop the death? Is there any way to not get sickness? So then he's not happy, even everything he has with him. But his father is trying his best, sending the most beautiful women in the world or his country, and then music, nightclubs, maybe. That night, I don't know. So all this facility he's offering, but he's really committed to one thing. Is there a way out of this? This is why. That's how he left his palace. And even he has a small baby, he has to left this, because there's one thing, the compassion. If I can achieve this, there's something that I can do for myself, then I can offer this to my child, my wife, and my father, and whole sentient beings. This is the great compassion. In a small, simple story of Buddha, there's so many things we can learn from. So this is maybe something how Buddha shows the renunciation to us. So the time is until 10, right? Okay. So when we should do meditation on renunciation. And you cannot just renunciation like this. So when we talk about renunciation, there should be some pleasure feeling. If you don't see any benefit, if you don't see something good in it, so you won't ever buy it. we talked so many things about it. You will leave every experience here, and once you go out, you are the same person. And maybe you really don't want to. You have a very nice maybe car outside. Let's say Ferrari, or I don't know, BMW, the latest one, very expensive. So when we talk so much about renunciation, maybe you feel like this is only thing that people who has to do with spiritual people, they talk all this stuff. I enjoy this beautiful car that I have outside. Maybe your mind is already down there. But then, why you are not buying this? Because you feel it sounds like quite realistic, but it doesn't help me because there's not much. When you think about it, there's no good, positive, or happiness when you think about this feeling. So for that, I was thinking last night. In the past, Tibetan masters of Katampa, we call Katampa lamas. So then, when they are offered a dinner or lunch in the what we call it, the bowl, baking bowl. So they finish their dinner, then they will put it upside down because they make decision. Maybe there is no tomorrow for me. So then I had to practice that. So they don't bow it and then just wait for death. They put it down and they prepare themselves for something. And that preparing gives them a pleasure. How? So whenever you feel this is something to do with attachment. Because when you are so attached, then it brings so many sufferings and so much expectation, right? So then, when you think about impermanent, then it talks about the negative qualities of so much expectation leads into suffering. So then he has it, he drinks the water, then just put it there. And he's happy with this. So then next day he's not dead, and then he goes and start baking again, and then he's happy. So in the past, and now it's little bit change. In the past, monks are not. I'm not criticizing monks. I must make sure. I want to go back to India, and I don't want to get in trouble. At the time of Buddha, they have only baking bowl, so they finish this. They cannot just keep it for tomorrow, leftover tomorrow. Leftovers, they can't keep it like this. There is a certain rule because of this kind of practice. So then, now these days, maybe monks more, they have to study. So maybe this is the big reason. They need a refrigerator and to put everything in. And then, yeah, maybe something like that. So, in one of His Holiness Dalai Lama's book, to be honest, I haven't read it. But then some of the one Indian film star, one famous actress, she wrote on her Facebook, that day was His Holiness' birthday, His Holiness Dalai Lama's birthday. So she posted, saying, she quoted that and then said, His Holiness quotation. So saying like, man sacrifices his life to make happiness, make reputation, money. Why? To have for happiness. Then slowly, then once they have money, then they try to what we call maintain or to recover the body or the health that he has already sacrificed before. Then he wants to recover it. Then once he faced some big problem lying in the bed, and then he feels like, I have sacrificed a lot, but I haven't gained or experienced such a happiness, like Steve Jobs. So this is one of the best quotation I have ever read. So I'm a big fan of His Holiness. This is what she quoted and then put that on a Facebook post. So this is how we look at to our life. It's true, isn't it? We are not talking about future life, only this life. Why we take it very important? Why? And something like deep inside, it says it's important, isn't it? You cannot let it go. I'm not saying just let it go completely, but then why isn't it giving us a time or opportunity in our brain thinking there's something more about it in this life, that more meaningful? So whenever people ask me what is the definition of meaningful life, it is difficult for me to answer that. I cannot say this life is the base and then all the next coming life, it depends on this life and you have to think about all this. It doesn't make any sense to the people who is not ready to think about that. So then the only thing is that be a good person, help the society, and then through this you experience positive feelings, then that's the meaningful life. This is a very simple way to offer, right? So now this is the part that when we talk about three scopes of three scopes of beings. So this I try to explain about the first scope of the beings. So there are more interesting explanations, but then my knowledge and my English is very limited, so this is how I can offer you on this matter. So now we have 9 more minutes. So let me try to talk a little bit about the second scope of the beings. So having this kind of renunciation and then thinking this life, the next life, whenever we are reborn, in a good way, in a bad way, but you have to face all sort of many kinds of suffering, especially the change of suffering. Suffering of change. Suffering of change. Then, so you feel like the example of Buddha Shakyamuni's deeds, right? So he said to his assistant, whether there is a way to stop it, can my father stop me from these problems, aging, and it's wrote in the story, so maybe this is something not a real question, but it's in the book, right? So then, because he believes in his father, he's doing his best. And then his assistant said, even your father can't stop it. Nobody can stop us. And then he said, there are so many people like you are thinking that way, and they call a monk. So they, in Assam or something, then they go to the forest and do meditation. Maybe some say they have found the method, some says it is difficult, but they are trying something in the forest. So this is how Buddha got idea. So he felt like, well, even staying in this kind of environment, I can't get enough, what do you call it, enough studies from what I'm looking for. So he felt like, well, I need to go to the forest. So he went, that's how, so he went to the forest. So his biggest concern is there any way to put end to this kind of suffering? This is the biggest question. And this is something when really Dharma practitioner should be. So if I'm not calling I'm a real Dharma practitioner, but I'm trying to be a Dharma practitioner. And Dharma friends here, and we all feel like we are a practitioner. So if we feel this is true way of feeling, then I think we have to think always, is there a way to put an end towards it. So Buddha spent 6-7 years in the forest researching about, is there a way to stop or bring cessation? Is that right? Cessation? Is that? Yes. So his work, he put his all effort into that. But then when we have to talk about the cessation, then we also have to think about the causes of the suffering. So then let's talk about, for an example, attachment. And then, is it really positive? Is it really negative? What is that so-called attachment? But now we are quite educated, because then we really don't need to prove to ourselves that attachment leads us into suffering. And then if you can make a link between the attachment and then the sufferings there, you are suffering, the result and the cause is the attachment. If you can make any connection with this life, so then you have to think a little bit further more than this. So where does attachment comes from? You know that attachment and the suffering in this life comes through one cause. So that cause is not other than I really need it. So you feel very. This I is not it looks like a simple I, but this I is the one you think I really need it, and you don't respect me. That's other version of I. So all this sort of ignorance mind, we call ignorance mind. What does it ignore? So maybe we should be very careful when we label as I, where if we are so we feel like we have to serve this kind of I. So where is that important eye? So for that, when we recite Heart Sutra in Hebrew, right? So from top to bottom, you try to find out. Then there is no existence, inherent existence of so-called solid I. We should put, whenever you say selflessness, you should always think about the solid based I. There's no such thing like this. Otherwise, sometimes we mistake, like from the top to bottom, for all the aggregates, you try to find I, then you don't feel there's no I, then you might think there's no I at all. So this is not the thing that Buddha has realized. So the purpose of searching this way is we have put too much. We have exaggerated the I. So like the phone. If you show this to His Holiness Dalai Lama, he will just look and say, maybe he won't try to recognize, what is this? He will say, this is iPhone. Oh, okay. He will just go like, okay, that's it, right? But then you give it to me, then I can give you better teachings on iPhone, because I am attached to it. I have more experience than His Holiness, I guess. One time it's a funny joke, because normally he never receives any phone calls and something from other people. But then one time he received a call from President Bush. So because they are good friends, then His Holiness, he really has a concern about His Holiness' health, and then he find out that His Holiness was quite sick, and then he called him, and then the private office, his secretary, who is my friend, he went with the phone and then gave it to His Holiness. Then His Holiness thought, okay, then when he talked, he listened, and he talked like this. So then his assistant, every time they have to remind His Holiness that you don't need to do that. So that's my His Holiness Dalai Lama. So, but he uses this one. When he does that, but then no attention. So no pain, because maybe it falls down, he'll say, oh, the phone broke. But then if I broke this one, then whole day, and then I'm upset, right? So this is us. So what I'm trying to say here, so when you're attached, your mind totally goes into it, and you don't have any space for others. So our mind becomes so narrow. So then the biggest question is it okay to be like this? Then you know this is not okay, but still you're stuck with it. So this is maybe the time we stop here now.
Yeah.
It's 10:02.
I'll just
Yes.
explain it to me.
Okay.
No, it's
You know?
We've done a slightest change in the schedule. Instead of having now a break and then discussion, we have now the discussion and then the break, 45 minutes a discussion. And the reason for the change is that Rinpoche would like to stay with us and have the discussion together. So, but we'll try not to have it like questions and answers only, but also a discussion, so people can give their opinion about a question, ask a question, say what we think, how we feel about it, and